In the early days of YouTube, it was a vastly different landscape compared to what it's like now. Most videos were produced by teenagers and young adults just trying to make people laugh. There weren't a ton of big-name content creators like there are now. The likes of Mr. Beast, Markiplier, and PewDiePie wouldn't exist for years to come. But there were a handful of creators we kept coming back to. And the big two, in my opinion, were James Rolfe, aka the Angry Video Game Nerd, and Doug Walker, aka the Nostalgia Critic. Both of these two men would catch the internet by storm and influence various other game and movie reviewers over the years. There was a time where you couldn't go anywhere on the internet without hearing about either of these guys. They were that big. But then we have the other side of the coin. There was another, though much lesser known, nowhere near as widespread content-wise, and not a reviewer like these two, there was another figure in YouTube's deep-rooted history from around the same time that seems to be mostly forgotten these days, but one that I feel is well worth a discussion. Brett Vanderbrook, aka Captain S. You might not have heard of him, but if you're an AVGN fan or even a Nostalgia Critic fan, you've most likely seen him before. But we'll get to why that is shortly. First, who and what exactly is Captain S?
He's Captain S, and he is one hell of a guy. He's Captain S, be glad that he is on our side. The bad guys do not stand a chance. They see him and they wet their pants. He'll kick their butt from here to France, oh yeah. He's Captain S.
The New Adventures of Captain S, produced by the YouTube channel PPC Productions, first premiered on January 13th, 2007, with the episode A Hero for All of Us. It's here that we are introduced to Captain S, aka Chad Belmont, a high school junior with a massive love for Sega games. He soon finds a merchant selling a mysterious Sega Genesis game. While with the merchant, he runs into Ness, a former friend turned rival. Upon returning home, Chad gets sucked into a mystical world known as Videoland, the world inside all of our favorite games. Captain S is immediately greeted by the Big Blue Head and is told that he is the champion of Videoland, sworn to fight the villains plotting behind the scenes, and armed with his controller and zapper gun the Big Blue Head gives to him, nothing can stand in his way. At the end of the episode, we see Ness and the Game Genie plotting their next scheme. Shortly after the release of Episode 1, PPC Productions partnered with the website ScrewAttack.com, which was the official home of the Angry Video Game Nerd at the time, to be the official home of Captain S. Episode 2, SS, He's Our Man, premiered on Screw Attack on January 19th. The episode features Chad and his jock friend Lunk trying out for the school soccer team, with Chad mainly doing it to impress Stacy Neufeld, one of the popular girls at school. However, Chad fails at every attempt. Chad returns home to receive a distress call from Videoland, where he's told that FIFA Land is in trouble. Being transported into the game FIFA International Soccer, Chad is on his own against Ness's team. Chad uses Lunk's advice from earlier to win the game, beating Ness's team in the process. Episode 3, All's Fair in Love and Sega, premiered on February 1st. It's Valentine's Day at Bromley High, and Chad has made a Valentine for Stacy. But, unbeknownst to Chad, his friend Becky has made him one, which she plans to give him during their study session that night. But Chad has an impromptu study session with Stacy instead, forgetting the plans with Becky. The next day, Chad tells Becky that he's planning to ask Stacy to the Valentine's Day dance, meaning he'll miss the Valentine's Day Monster Movie Marathon that he was planning on attending with Becky and Lunk.
I was kind of going to ask Stacy to the Valentine's Day dance.
What? Whoa, whoa, whoa! Chad Belmont, what the Zaxxon are you on? You haven't missed one of the massacres in like the last 3 years. What are you gonna tell Lunk?
Oh?
Not now, Lunk! You're just this too, and then I can't, and it's just, ah!
Becky rips up her Valentine's Day card for Chad and wishes for Stacy to disappear. It's here we get the reveal that Ness is a student at the school. Becky soon finds out Chad's secret and even jumps into Videoland to help him save Stacy from Ness. At the end, we see the Game Genie cybernetically enhancing Ness with a Virtual Boy console. Episode 4, She Blinded Me with Saga, premiered on February 16th. Chad and Lunk are partnered up for the science fair. What could possibly go wrong? As the pair struggles to come up with an idea for their project, Ness slips Lunk a mysterious book. As Chad struggles with a baking soda volcano he and Lunk are making, he comes across the book and, seeing some explosive stalagmites on one of the pages, gets the idea to go into the game Subterranea to find some for their volcano. While in the game, Captain S comes face to face with Ness, who has taken the place of one of the enemies in the game. After defeating Ness, Chad gets the stalagmites. However, Stacy and Becky end up winning the science fair as Chad and Lunk's volcano blows up in their faces. Episode 5, When Push Comes to Shove It, premiered on March 2nd. After he gets chastised by his principal for being lazy and just having a bad attitude, Chad decides that he needs to find a job, mainly so he can get some money to impress Stacy. Chad then gets a job at a box factory and uses his Videoland powers to make moving the boxes way easier. Unbeknownst to him, though, Ness is watching. Upon returning home, Captain S is summoned by the Big Blue Head to realign some power containment units in the Mega Drive, which of course means more box pushing. Meanwhile, Ness reports to the Game Genie that Chad is using his powers in the real world, meaning that if Chad keeps using them in the real world, his powers will be useless in Videoland and the real world. After being ambushed and nearly defeated by Ness, Chad goes back to the real world where he learns that a little hard work isn't so bad. However, after he leaves his house, it's revealed that the Big Blue Head and possibly Videoland is in trouble. Episode 6, Nigel Strikes Back, premiered on March 16th. Chad is continuing to abuse his Videoland powers in the real world. Using this and the fact that they have weakened the Big Blue Head to their advantage, Ness and the Game Genie are able to infiltrate the Blast Processing Core in order to steal the X Code, the source of Captain S's powers. After a confrontation with Ness, Captain S is defeated. Upon returning home, the Genesis catches on fire. Becky puts the game cartridge into a Sega Game Gear as our hero sits, at a loss for what to do next. It's worth noting that in this episode, we find out that Ness's real name is Nigel. Episode 7, For the Kid and S All, premiered on March 30th. Feeling bad for himself after his defeat at the hands of Ness, Chad sulks around drinking milkshakes all day after feeling that he let everyone down. Meanwhile, video games everywhere are glitching and becoming nightmare-filled, thanks to Ness and the Game Genie getting their hands on the X Code. After a conversation with a kid at a park, Chad realizes how this is affecting everyone, so we get a training montage of Chad trying to get his strength back, complete with him running in a pink hoodie, a la Little Mac from Punch-Out! The episode ends with Chad suited up as Captain S, ready to save Videoland. Episode 8, Captain S will Make You Clap Clap, premiered on April 13th. Captain S is making his way through various worlds and games as he tries to save Videoland, but he ends up losing too much power, making him weak once again. In the real world, the Big Blue Head tells Becky and Lunk, who are monitoring Chad's progress, that if everyone in the real world claps for Chad, his power level will rise above normal levels and give him the strength he needs to continue. This ends up working, allowing Chad to continue on his mission. Captain S ends up saving most of the game worlds, leaving Ness and Game Genie to panic. But the Game Genie plans to take his scheme into the real world, moving to Bromley High and taking over the body of the school's principal. The episode ends with Becky getting called into the principal's office. Episode 9, Zombies Ate My Homeroom, premiered on April 27th. Chad is late for school, only to get there and find that every student has been turned into a zombie, thanks to the Game Genie and the X Code. Making his way through the school, Chad discovers Becky tied up to a chair as a zombie, and soon finds himself face to face with the Game Genie for the first time. Just as Chad is about to defeat the Game Genie in the real world, Ness appears and knocks Chad down, taking the Game Genie with him back to Videoland. The episode ends with Chad approaching the TV, prepared to follow Ness and Game Genie back into Videoland, as Becky remains a zombie and we see Lunk and Stacy, who had been fighting the zombies throughout the episode, being overtaken by zombies. On May 11th, 2007, we get the season finale, Good? Bad? He's the guy with the kick. After the events of the last episode, Captain S makes his way to the villain's lair, coming face to face with Ness. He tries to convince Ness that the Game Genie is just using him, but Ness won't listen. After Ness fails to defeat Captain S, the Game Genie sends Ness away into the real world, planning to deal with Captain S himself. Beating Ness to within an inch of his life, the Game Genie prepares to deal the final blow, but Ness comes back to save Chad, tossing him a super scope. Captain S deals a blow to the Game Genie, knocking him down into the spikes below. But destroying the Game Genie causes a chain reaction that causes the lair to start falling apart, and Ness gets crushed beneath some pillars. Ness tells Chad to save himself. Returning to the real world, the zombies are all gone, and Chad confesses his feelings for Becky. The episode ends with Chad and the rest of the crew toasting Ness for his sacrifice. And the last thing we see, at the very end of the credits, is a simple message. Ness will return. A bittersweet end for a great little web series. And then, later on in 2007, we got a Christmas miracle. In the middle of summer, Christmas was in trouble, and it was up to our beloved captain to save the day. But this time, he was bringing an unlikely ally with him. That's right, on August 4th, we got what would end up being the last episode of Captain S. A very nerdy, non-canonical Captain S Christmas. After the angry video game nerd is mistaken for Santa Claus and taken captive by the Game Genie, it's up to Captain S to find the real Santa and save Christmas with the help of the nerd. This episode is called non-canonical because there really isn't a place it could fit in the overall Captain S story, especially considering the fate of the Game Genie at the end of episode 10. Nonetheless, it's still a fun little adventure, and was my introduction to Captain S way back when it first came out. Sometime after the conclusion of Season 1, a webcomic, Captain S Videoland Saga, was released on PBC Productions' site to help bridge the gap between Seasons 1 and 2. The webcomic tells the story of Captain S going into Videoland to find an old friend, being Ness, since he kinda had to be left behind at the end of episode 10. However, the webcomic was never finished, ending at only 18 pages. After saving Christmas together, Captain S and the nerd would reunite one last time in 2008 to fight another foe.
So, critic, how dare you come here? Critic!
Have you accepted my challenge to review a horrible, nostalgic movie?
Yes, nostalgia critic, I do accept your challenge. But you must suffer at a bad game.
E.T.
Hold on, guys. Hold on.
I'm on a bad game. The Dread Department.
I thought this beef was all online. I didn't think this was for real.
You stay out of this,
You had
ass.
like 10 disclaimers on your video.
Listen, just because we saved Christmas together doesn't mean you have to be involved in this. You can just, this has
Get out of this, ass. This
That's
isn't
all,
your business.
James.
Who are you? Sorry, are you on YouTube or something?
And the nerd. I was almost as popular as him. I was like number 50. Okay, nerd. You know what, nerd? Let's settle this right now. Right here, right now.
In the ring. But you know what? My ring's outside.
Around this same time, PBC Productions commented on the season finale, confirming that Season 2 was underway, and that the scripts were almost finished being written, and that they were also seeking funding. However, nothing ever came of this. As it turns out, one of the reasons the second season never happened was because that Screw Attack required Brett and the crew to wrap up the airing as well as the filming of the episodes by August, so that they could release a DVD in November. But by the end of May, shooting had not started yet, so the team thought that meeting the deadline was completely impossible. In 2009, we'd see Chad Belmont one last time as he gave a message to the nation, pretty much confirming that the show would not return for a second season.
My name is Chad Belmont. I was known as Captain S, Defender of Videoland.
I can't play many actual clips from this video due to the use of copyrighted music, but I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to check it out. And for 5 years, that was the last we heard of the champion of Videoland. But in 2014, at that year's MagFest convention, a look at the next season of Captain S would finally be shown. I was unable to find the picture of the event I remember seeing at the time, a picture of Captain S looking pretty injured, but eyewitness reports on Twitter tell me I wasn't imagining what I saw all those years ago. And while they did film a pilot for this next season, it was never finished as far as the editing stage goes. According to Brett himself, this next take on the Good Captain would have been more adult and less campy. So maybe Brett will one day release that pilot, although he seems to be content with leaving Captain S in the past, though through the comments I've seen from him online, he seems to have very fond memories of the show and character. Captain S was a symbol. He stood for something. And unlike the Nerd and Critic, it was a show for the whole family. The classic battle between good and evil, the balancing of two separate worlds, in this case being Chad's life as a high schooler and his life as Captain S. It was a nice change of pace for a YouTube series at the time. So definitely check it out, it's well worth your time. And while Captain S was retired long ago, Brett himself still made occasional video appearances for a while, appearing in such videos as James Rolfe's Follow That Marshmallow, where the pair travel around New York in search of filming locations for the 1984 classic Ghostbusters.
I believe that we were destined to shoot a different video.
What sort of video?
The Ghostbusters location documentary tour in New York City.
All right. Where do we go first?
I don't know, Brett. I don't know.
As well as attending the Roast of the Angry Video Game Nerd as a roaster.
But we're here tonight to talk about James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd. Or as his family knows him, why couldn't you just be a doctor? I'll never forget meeting James for the first time when we were shooting the Captain S Angry Video Game Nerd crossover, and the immortal words that he said to me that day. I went to meet him at the train station, I shook his hand, introduced myself, and he said, "Oh, hey." Profound, this guy. It was then that I realized that James is nothing like the character he plays in his videos. He's the polar opposite of the nerd character. Yeah, because in the nerd videos, he's funny, entertaining, and interesting to listen to. Seriously, I have had longer conversations with street performers pretending to be statues. This guy is so painfully shy and awkward for the first year and a half, I just thought he had a crush on me.
I'm unsure if he's made other appearances and things since then, but these are the two big ones. I'm not really sure what he's been up to in recent years, but I definitely hope he's keeping busy. Brett, if you're watching this, thank you for the laughs and the memories. I sincerely hope that we'll see new content from you one day. Hey everyone, Seeker here. Thanks for watching this last minute impromptu video. My end of year video I was working on won't be out until next month at some point, but I still wanted to get something out for you guys. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in 2023.